I'll begin this morning by asking you a question, and I won't require you to show me your hands. But if I were to set before you this morning a task that you needed to do, that I wanted you to do, that I held out in front of you, how many of you might say, well, as I look at that problem, I'm going to take a conservative approach? Or how many of you might say, well, I'll attack it in some kind of moderate way. I'll sort of take a middle ground and go after it. And then again, how many of you might say, well, I'll take a radical approach. That's the way I'll solve it. I'll really go after this. Now, I suspect that I'm like most of you. If I'm confronted with a problem, I'm either going to take rather a conservative kind of approach to it or a moderate approach. Very seldom am I going to take a radical approach to solving a problem. But I want to set that this morning in the context of God's call to us. Jesus says, take up your cross and follow me. And we all know where that leads. That leads to the hard wood of the cross. And we say, well, he couldn't really mean that. He was just sort of using that as some kind of example. Well, on this second Sunday of Lent, I want to put the evidence in front of you as best I can. And it is found in our lessons this morning. God calls Abram, an old man, 99 years old. And he says to Abram, I want you to pack up everything you have. All of your belongings and all of your family. And I want you to go to this country that I'm going to show you. Now, Abram still doesn't know where this country is. But God says, go. And Abram goes. God doesn't give Abram a choice and say, well, you can wait a little while and think about it. You can ponder what it is you might want to do and how you might respond to this. God says, pick up everything and go. And Abram goes. We can leap ahead a few years. And Saul, the persecutor of the Christians, finds himself on the road to Damascus. And he is struck down. And Jesus appears to him and says, get up, I want you to be an apostle to all the world. Don't think about it. You don't have a choice. You can't ponder it. You can't take a conservative approach. You can't take a moderate approach. You have got to go now. And we know, or history tells us, that Paul gets up and goes. Literally to all the known world, making disciples of all peoples. There was no half-hearted response. Look at the disciples, the story of Jesus and his first telling of his passion. The disciples, we might say, had taken some kind of radical approach. They had followed. Now it gets down to the rub. And Jesus says to them, this is what's going to happen to me. And oh, by the way, that's what's going to happen to you as well. Now, Peter isn't quite so sure, and the other disciples aren't quite so sure at this point in time. They want Jesus to be a little bit more moderate. Take it a little slower, Jesus. You don't have to confront the people. You don't have to confront the world. And Jesus' response to Peter is, "Get behind me, Satan." Or recall when it was said, the disciple who wanted to follow said, "Well, I want to go bury my father." Jesus said, "No." You see, the call of Jesus and the call of God is a call to radical response. It's not a call to a moderate or conservative approach. It's a call to a radical obedience. And that's what's in the lessons for us. And so often I think what we want to do is we say, well, I don't think he really meant that, and I'll respond, but I'll do it sort of in a moderate kind of way. And as soon as we do that, we start down a slippery road that says and leads us to not following at all. I know that this is hard to hear. It's hard for me to hear. I'm not sure I always want to follow in that radical kind of way. And yet when I look at the evidence, if I'm honest with myself and look at the gospel, what I discover is that there is no moderation. God's call to us is to be radical in this world. Jesus turned the world upside down. And that's the ministry he's given us. And I think sometimes that's one of our greatest problems as Christians. We want to give a lukewarm response. And so as we begin this season of Lent, and I realize today's the second Sunday of Lent, let us recommit ourselves to a radical approach. I know that's hard. I know what I'm asking. But I know that in my heart is what Jesus is asking us. Respond with your whole heart, your mind, your body, and your spirit. And that will make a difference not only in your life, but in the life of all those you come in contact with. May you have a blessed Lent. Amen.
Amen.